Hi guys. So my husband and I were on night shift for about a decade. My pregnancy was on night shift. My son was sleeping on night shift until he was about 6 months old, and then we decided that I would quit my job, spend more time with the baby, and my husband would move to day shift. And so my son was going to sleep 5, 6 in the morning, and we now wanted him to wake up 6, 7 in the morning. So that was a huge switch in time. And when I looked on the internet for advice, I couldn't find much. So I thought I would share my story of what we did, what worked, what I wish I would have known, um, and how we got there. So it took about 3 weeks for us to switch over. And in the beginning, we approached it as all hands on deck. My husband and I would both rip off the band-aid really fast. We would work together. We would just be sleep deprived, and we would make the switch. What I wish would have happened, what we ended up doing in the end was my husband is the one working, so he focused on himself. We put him in the guest bedroom. He used earplugs. He switched over like a dream because after 6 months of being sleep deprived, having earplugs, and being in a bed by yourself, he just slept so great. For me, when I was trying to rip off the band-aid quickly, I was ending up more and more sleep deprived every day, and it was very difficult to stay disciplined and keep the baby moving forward. So what should have happened, what happened in the end, was we reached out to my husband's parents and asked them if they could come over for the baby's waking hour and play with him for the first hour and a half to ensure that he stays on his rhythm or schedule, and that I could sleep during that time. So, because my husband would be working most of the time, other than on the weekends. So, what ended up working was I had noticed that my baby was waking up at 9 in the morning every day. So, we used that as our starting point, and that was going to be the beginning of his day. So, at 9 a.m., the in laws came over and they played with him for an hour, and then I breastfed him again, and he went back to sleep after an hour and a half of being awake for an hour and a half nap. And then he would wake up for about 2 hours, 2.5 hours, and we put him down for his next nap. And then he'd wake up again for, I think, 2.5 hours, another hour and a half nap, and then the end of the day. So he went from having 2 naps a day and sleeping 11 hours at night to sleeping 9.5 hours at night, 3 naps a day, and having a much shorter nighttime ritual trying to get to bed, because before we were wasting a lot of time trying to get him to sleep. But the biggest problem was that my husband could not work around the clock with me with the baby and then also go to work, and I could not have the discipline to wake up every morning to play with him when I had only had a few hours of sleep. So what was happening was we woke him up. In the beginning, we woke him up at 8 a.m. and did anything we could to keep him awake. And he ended up so sleep deprived, he just couldn't sleep. So I would lay him down and he would fall asleep, and 15 minutes later he would wake up and just scream, which he didn't used to do. And he did that for hours. And so when he did that for 2, 3 hours. And so when he finally fell asleep, he fell asleep hard. And then 9 a.m. hit, and it was just ridiculous to wake him up because he hadn't had any sleep, and it was just so sad. Every time he took a nap, he would turn his head and twist away from the light when you woke him up. I'm like, why are we doing this? But I didn't want him to have marathon naps, or he would fall backwards, and I'd have to fight to put him to sleep earlier in the evening again. So I think having the set wake up time really helped, and having the set nap times really helped, and we were very disciplined on when we did it, that I would prepare. So I would wake him up, we'd play for an hour, and then I would spend 15 minutes breastfeeding and 15 minutes putting him to sleep. And that would be for the first round, and then the next round we did a little bit longer of a wake, and then the next round we do a lot longer of a wake. So my tips for you, if you're trying to do a switch like this, get meals that are easy to eat. So for us, just as adults, I was finding that my stomach was not on cue with changing over to the new schedule, and I ended up in a pinch because I am trying to rock this baby to sleep. I'm trying to do anything I can to get the baby to go to sleep, and he's waking up every 15 minutes, and so I'm having to go back to him, and I didn't have time to eat. And so when he finally went to sleep, I had spent so many hours dealing with him bouncing back and forth. Now I needed to go to sleep, but I'm starving. And then when I wake up in the morning, same thing, as it's 9 a.m., it's time for him to play, I need to go back to sleep, but I'm starving. So having pre-made sandwiches in the fridge, having pre-made pasta, anything that's easy really helped, especially the first couple days. Next thing was that really helped us was that, so when he was on night shift, we would turn on all of the lights in the house so that he could get a sense of day versus night. On day shift, I started a ritual of, at the end of the night, we would walk around and turn off all the lights, and he's actually like hitting the switches himself, and I would walk him around the dark house, and then I would show him out the window of, it's really dark outside, and we go to his room, and he seemed to get that after just 1 or 2 days. He got that. So a couple times he just couldn't sleep, and I wasn't going to try and keep forcing him to sleep, so I would take him out of the bedroom to play, and I would only turn on a couple lights. But first we would walk around of, wow, it's nighttime, it's time to be asleep, so dark out. And then I'd lay him down and turn on just a couple lights, and we would play lightly, and then we would go try and sleep when he was ready. But regardless of when he went to sleep, we would wake up at 9 a.m. And then after about a week of this, he was not getting enough sleep every day, and so he was cranky, and it was hard, and I just felt like I was torturing him. So I started letting go on how long he napped. That if he napped 2 hours, 2.5 hours, that was fine, as long as it wasn't the last nap of the day. And I found that once I started allowing him to nap longer, he actually went to bed earlier in the evening, and he was staying asleep better. So I still think that the short naps in the beginning were important because we were pulling back his hours so much. But in the end, my goal was to get him to bed at midnight, wake him up at 9, have those three naps. And then we decided as a collective whole, my in-laws, my husband and I, just focus on that for a while, just let him catch his breath. And he magically started going to bed earlier, and going to bed earlier, and going to bed earlier. And then when he started going to bed earlier, he started waking up slightly earlier, and slightly earlier, and slightly earlier. So it took about 3 weeks, and we are here. He is now officially on day shift. And I will warn you, he had a lot more feeding sessions, because if you're breastfeeding, your milk production is on a certain schedule, and then when you change your schedule, then when his tummy is on the old schedule and it's trying to switch to the new schedule, and your body's on the old schedule and it's trying to switch to the new schedule. And so when you're feeding at different times, you have to teach your body to make that milk at that time. And he didn't know what he was doing, so he was just feeding a lot. That we went from 6 feeding sessions to 11, and we've now trickled that back down to 9, and we're adding in a few solids, and that seems to be helping too, feeding outside of breastfeeding. And we were pretty disciplined about not putting him to sleep completely passed out. We were disciplined about not breastfeeding him to sleep. But with this change, I felt like do whatever it takes. So I started rocking him to sleep, and then after he fell asleep, I would rock him for another 15 minutes before I put him down. And that helped, because in the beginning, he was waking up every 15 minutes and screaming. When I started rocking him for longer sessions, he actually stayed asleep. And I really don't feel like we've broken any good habits, because he does wake up in the middle of the night and put himself back to sleep. So he still knows how to put himself to sleep, and that's the most important part. So I will warn you, he woke up a lot more often at night. He turned his brand new 11 hours a night, which was just so amazing. 11-hour a night sleep session down to 8.5, 9 hours. And then we are now getting back on track. And so I rocked him, I spent a lot more time rocking him, which meant that while he's sleeping a good long time, I'm not, because I'm spending all this time rocking him. He fed more, and when he fed more, that meant I'm waking up more in the night to feed him. And that also meant tons of wet diapers that in the middle of the night you would lay him down and he would cry and he wanted to feed, and then you would lay him down again and he would cry and he had a wet diaper, and then you would lay him down again and it was food, and just over and over and over. And he's learning and you're learning, and just give them grace and patience and love, because it's hard for him just as it is for you. So a lot more feeding, turning out the lights every night, walking around and showing him the daylight in the morning, and we always look out the windows and maybe take a quick walk outside if it is good weather, and then at nighttime we look out all the windows and turn off all the lights. And I've actually gone outside a couple times at night. He's just fascinated, and we talk about nighttime, and then that helped a lot. I would encourage short naps in the beginning, because you don't really want them to do a power nap during the day and then not be able to sleep at night. But in the end, I mean, everybody's child is different, but for me, in the end, my son did better once I allowed him to sleep more. Again, it took us 3 weeks. Sorry, I'm going through my list I'd written down. It took 3 weeks for us to get fully switched over, and I feel like we are finally finding a rhythm. And I didn't used to have as much control over his rhythm as I do now. Now I feel like he's really understands his day and understands the rhythm and the schedule. And I don't know if that's because it's just his age, or if it's because I put so much focus into what is happening. Am I making progress? Am I falling backwards? But so that's been really good. And that's pretty much it. The other one was only have one person follow the baby. That separating out my husband to where he got full sleep and me follow the baby was a lot better. In the beginning, I was focused on all of us switching hours, and in the end, what needed to happen was I sleep when the baby sleeps. Don't you hate that statement? Because if he goes to bed at midnight, I don't go to bed till 12:30. If he goes to bed at 2 in the morning, I don't go to bed till 2:30. So it's ridiculous to think I'm going to wake up 7, 8 in the morning. I don't need to train myself to wake up at 7, 8 in the morning. I'm so sleep deprived. Whenever the baby goes to sleep, I will be able to sleep as long as I'm not starving. And get outside help. My husband helped on the weekends for that early morning session, but just an hour and a half of so when the baby woke up at 9 in the morning, I would breastfeed him. My in-laws would play with him really well, and he was really excited to see them that early in the morning. So that helped him have motivation to get out of bed. But I would breastfeed and then I would go right back to bed. And so that helped me if I wasn't going to bed till 2 in the morning to quick feed, go back to sleep. They took care of him for an hour and a half, and then I would wake up for another quick feed and I would get to sleep while he slept. So that extended my sleep quite a bit. And in the beginning, we were trying to keep him from taking too much of naps, and so a couple times they came over in the evening. Again, same thing. He was so excited to see them. He was willing to stay up. He was much more rambunctious, so he would be ready to go to sleep by the time he was supposed to. So that made a big difference. And when we were trying to, sometimes I found he would be super grumpy because he just didn't get enough sleep. And so we would play calm. We would read books. We would watch a little TV. Baby Genius is a great series. It's made by Disney. They're just amazing. We would take baths. Going outside always changes his mood as fast as possible. If I'm trying to keep him awake, taking him to the mall and take him to the play area to just watch other children. We would do whatever it took to try and encourage him to be awake when he needed to be and asleep when he needed to be. And we got there, and it was great. So that was our experience. If you've done the same, I would be so interested to hear what happened for you. This Other people have had to gone through this. It's crazy that there's just not a lot written out there. Good luck on your journey, and that was ours. Thanks for watching.